It's another Monday on Montlake, and I am your host, Montlake Miguel. Welcome back, everybody. It's been another kind of just regular week. It's the off season, nothing too crazy. Even though on the recruiting trip, even though I haven't seen any commits or anything, man, I've been paying attention to Deshaun Yarborough's social media. He's wearing a lot of Husky gear, so I'm hoping that means good things for what we may see down the line because I know he's supposed to make his commitment here in the next week or so. Anyways, this week on Mondays on Montlake, what we're going to dive into is position battles. There's going to be lots of them on the team. Some of them smaller ones like backup quarterback, things like that. But the big ones that we're going to focus on are going to be like maybe four or five of them. And that's what we're going to focus on today. Because these battles, you know, I feel like last year, not getting some of these positions right cost the Huskies some games, specifically along the offensive line. Where I'll tell you what, when Carver Willis went down, Pocky Finau should have been out there playing tackle instead of Fa Solo or any of those guys. So I think it's very important this spring that when it comes to these position battles, that the coaching staff gets everything right because you can see what happens when it takes too long to figure out who the right guy is. And I really feel that specific choice cost the Huskies at least one game last year, maybe two if you count the Wisconsin game. And if you take both, if you take say the Michigan and the Wisconsin game and turn those into wins for UW, all of a sudden you have a playoff team. So I'm not going to say it cost us a playoff because who knows how those games would have turned out. But I don't think we were in the best position to win. So getting these position battles right is important. The first battle that we're going to talk about, and I think is going to be the biggest battle in camp, is going to be who's going to start in the backfield for your Washington Huskies. Now, personally, I think everything as far as the conversation for starting running back has to start with Jayden Lamar, the transfer from Oregon. The kid that's originally from here in Seattle, O'Day product. He has the most experience of it. Him and Trey Cooley actually both have probably the most experience of any of the running backs in the room. But I also think when it comes to upside, I think he's a guy that is going to get every chance to get the first few reps at running back. And he definitely fits in this offense, and this is why he fits in Jedd Fisch's system. Jedd Fisch wants a running back that's going to be able to run between the tackles, catch passes, understands protection, and can execute protection, play on third downs, and can stay on the field in every situation. When you're looking at Jayden Lamar is explosive. He's a one-cut runner, natural fit for an outside zone scheme, can create chunk plays, and is a good receiver. I think the biggest concerns for Jayden Lamar are going to be, can he hold up physically? And the big question is going to see is how he holds up in pass protection, because pass pro, when you're the every down back as opposed to a back that is coming in and out of the game like he did at Oregon, is going to mean a lot. And I mean, you saw it because Jonah Coleman knew how to pass protect. He was one of the guys they could count on, so they could play him every down when he was healthy. I think when we're looking at Jayden Lamar, I think he's the guy that gets the first crack at the number one running back position. And I'm not going to say it's his job to lose because I think that's a little overstating it, but I do think that he's going to be the guy that probably gets the first reps with the first team. Now, the next guy that we're going to take a look at is another transfer running back named Trey Cooley. He's 5'10", 200 pounds. He's a senior, so he's got a lot of experience. He's physical, reliable, a short yardage runner. He's a veteran, which is a big thing that we don't have in this room. And I think he could help in these close games. My biggest concern for him is going to be pass protection. I think that's going to be the entire conversation with around a lot of these backs is, can they really hold up in pass pro? Because if he does, then I think he'll play. I think he'll have the next best chance at getting as many carries as possible as we're in the midst of this battle. And I think, I don't know if it's a 1A, 1B type thing, but I think it very well could be. Now, those two guys, I think, are your top candidates to kind of fit into this system that Jedfish has, and they meet a lot of the requirements that Jedfish wants from his backs. As far as skills go, the big thing is, like I said, we keep talking, and we're going to keep bringing up pass protection. The next guy on the list is kind of a wild card because he got hurt in spring practice, and that's Jordan Washington. He's a sophomore. Can he get healthy is the big thing. The neck injury in the spring is huge. I know we're supposed to hear from Jedfish here in July at some point about what the status is on him. If he does play, I like Jordan Washington a lot. I thought his breakaway speed was, we haven't seen anything like that, I think, here since maybe John Ross. That's how fast he looked on in the games last year when he played. And I would love to see him get the ball more, especially in space, using him all kinds of ways to get the ball in his hands in space, because I think he's going to be hard to tackle because he's so quick. That's if he decides he's going to stay in. And that's also if he can protect the passer. If he can stick his nose in there and blocking, it's going to be important. The problem with guys that are a little bit smaller and quicker is sometimes they're a little bit more dainty. I'm not saying that he is, but I'm saying that's the issue you get with a lot of guys that are the slashers. Just like the next guy I'm going to bring up, Quaid Carr. Now, Quaid Carr in spring, man, I thought he looked great. Him and the next guy we're going to bring up were probably the best two running backs in the spring, at least to my eyes and at the practices I was at. He flashed. He's got explosiveness. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He, more than anything, though, he made the most of his opportunities this spring when he got the carries. And I don't feel like everybody felt there was a drop-off like there could be when you're going to what seems to be your number 3 or 4 or 5 back on your roster. So I think Quaid Carr is a guy that earned himself some carries and is definitely going to get a really good look in fall when when you see him on the field with these other backs that may be ahead of him right now. Because if he can flash like he did during the spring, they're not going to keep him off the field. But you got to be able to pass pro. All right, the next guy on my list is probably my favorite running back in the stable right now. He's every bit of 6'1", 6'2", 241 pounds. His name's Ansu Sanu. Big body, physical, but a lot quicker than I expected. And when I see him being able to get outside the tackle, the one cut and go to fit the schemes that the running scheme that we have here, I think he could really do it. And when it comes to short yardage, all the other guys that I named ahead of him, I don't think there was any guy that's over 210 pounds or 205 pounds. So having a big body like Sanu, I thought this was going to be Julian McMahon, who is still on the roster, but I felt like during the spring, Sanu moved himself up. And I think he's going to be a power complement, and he's going to get carries regardless because of his size. And I think his under reported speed is going to be something that you start seeing like what we saw during the spring. And during the spring, I thought he looked good in pass protection, but that was also during the spring. I want to see it when he's going up against the ones. And then more than anything, when we line up to play that Apple Cup on the first game of the season, if he gets a chance to step in there, I want to see him use that 240-pound body to lay out a linebacker or lay out a defensive end because he's a lot bigger than most running backs are. Can you tell that I like him? I like the kid. He's good. He's good. I just texted my guy Izzo from Dubbed Up about how awesome I thought the breakdown was when Dubbed Up did the breakdown on the incoming class and what they talked about with Ansu Sanu, because I really think that I think the kid has all the tools to be special. All right, the next one that I think that is a kind of wild card here, and he's a big 4-star recruit that came in this class. He was the highest rated recruit from this class, and he played a lot in the spring with the ones until he got before the spring game. He had I want to say it was like a hamstring or it was something. It wasn't a major injury. It was something that basically just kept him out for the game because they didn't want to risk it. But that's freshman Brian Bonner. I think if Brian Bonner can get up over that 205 mark, at the 5'11" that he is a versatile back, and when he runs fast and it looks effortless like a sprinter. And he's one of those guys that if he gets to the second level, he's going to be hard to catch. He also is a natural pass catcher. I think he's got a lot of upside to him. And I think they took a really good look at him in the spring. There's no way they're not going to continue that in the fall unless they felt he's fallen back. And the question is going to be is he just too talented to keep off the field? This is a perfect opportunity for him because there is no runaway starter like we had last year in Jonah Coleman. So if you're a freshman like Bonner, this is your chance to shine. And he has the skills to do it. We'll see if the maturity is there. If I'm gonna predict how this is gonna play out, like if you're gonna say, hey Mike, um, who's gonna be your starter? If you're looking at that on paper? On paper, I think Jayden Lamar is your starter. I think from everything that he's shown, he's going to be the guy with Cooley backing him up. In my heart, what I hope to see is I hope to see one of the wild cards. I hope to see either Sanu or Bonner or a combination of both of them. One of them really get a chance to shine, and that's if Jordan Washington doesn't get to play. If Jordan Washington gets to play, he's one of those guys that breakaway speed is something that's a weapon every time it's on the field, and I would love to see him get more touches. But right now, I think day one against Washington State, your starter is going to be Jayden Lamar. Put it down. All right. So the running back room, which is crazy, I think we've kind of sorted that. Now let's look at the next big battle on offense, and I think that's going to be the wide receiver three, or we're going to say the X receiver, because I think Rashid Williams over spring, and as long as he stays healthy, I think he ends up being your number one. That's how I viewed him during the spring. I think Dezmen Roebuck has already proven to be reliable. He's going to be a guy that's going to play a lot in the slot, and I think you're going to be able to count on him, and I think he showed that last year. But the next question is who's going to be that third guy, your big body guy that is on the other side of Rashid Williams? And I think the first person that we're going to take a look at is the transfer Christian Moss. He came in. He's a veteran. He's big. He's 6'3", 6'4". He showed when he was healthy during spring. He showed good hands and he showed strong route running. And I think that he is probably the guy that a lot of people are going to circle in to get that first shot with the ones. What I worry about with him is he going to hold up physically against Big Ten corners? Is he going to be a guy that's going to be able to create separation and really be able to show off those physical traits that he has? We don't know a lot about him. I think he had like 45 receptions last year, like 600 or 700 yards, but he wasn't even the leading receiver on his team. So I'm a little reserved, but I also like the experience that he's bringing. So I'm curious to see how he plays out. The next guy that I think is going to be up for that role, and I thought he did a really good job to solidify his place in the running, is Justice Williams. Now, Justice Williams is 6'4", 6'5". He's that big body that you really want. He's got, besides the frame, he's got a huge catch radius. And his upside is he could become a huge red zone problem if they can get him the ball. During the spring, you saw him going across the middle. You saw him making catches where he had to reach out with his hand, fight DBs with it, and then carry them guys for extra yards. Those are things that I've been wanting to see from a guy like this. And he seemed to show it during the spring in flashes. I just think consistency has to go up. But I really like what he brings to the table. And he's a homegrown guy that has come through and was recruited by our coaches, and I want to see him really get a chance to play. And like I said, use that big body, be able to do everything on the route tree, which during the spring it looked like he was able to do all that, whether it was him going deep, whether it was him doing the quick ins and outs. If he is able to really solidify his route tree, he's a guy that he could make a big splash and take a huge jump as far as what he's looked at on this roster as far as receivers go. The next guys that we're going to bring up, actually, first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up one of the other dudes that kind of fits the kind of mold of Rashid Williams, but I think is going to get a chance, every chance to play, and I think he has all the skill set to do it. And that's Chris Lawson. He was our highest touted wide receiver recruit from last season, and he played a little bit last year. While he was on the field during the spring, he shows everything that I want in a wide receiver. He catches the ball with his hands. He goes and attacks the ball. I'd like to see him do a little bit more on the yak side as far as being able to break tackles and get more yards after the catch. But he's a guy that I feel has reliable hands and I think could play a bunch if he can continue to be consistent. The guys that I think did the most surprising during the spring, I think were the two freshmen. And we're going to start with Jordan Clay. Jordan Clay, and I put this on Twitter, I think he looks like a better built Roma Dunze. And when I say 6'3", he is every single bit of 6'3". He's heavy in the legs, so he's a guy that doesn't look like a beanpole. That's the difference between him and like a Justice Williams. Those guys, or Christian Moss, those guys are skinny in their legs, where Jordan Clay is not. His catch radius is phenomenal. If you watch his high school stats, but also watch what he did during the spring, he's a guy that can go up and get the ball. I think he runs solid routes, especially for being a freshman. And I think he's kind of a prototype of what you want. Guy, his body type has NFL written all over it, and now he just has to play with the consistency to match. The next guy that I want to talk about that kind of fit that same role, or that I think surprised a lot of people during the spring, was Trez Davis. Trez Davis, to me, the way that he kind of dominated on the field reminded me of Jalen McMillan. He was, every time I turned around, he was making a catch. And when you're conspicuous like that, and it wasn't just flashes, it was very consistently. Those are things that the coaches know. It's what happened last year with Roebuck. Roebuck was that guy that every time you were watching practice last year, he was making a play. I would be taking my notes, and I'd have to write another note right after I was making a note about him because he would make the very next play. And I think Trez Davis showed a lot of that. I thought he has great hands. He's got he's real quick and fast. Like I said, he reminds me of a Jalen McMillan. And if he's that, man, like I said, we are lucky. And when I break down all the receivers that I just mentioned, and there's more on the roster, but just those guys right there, that's a lot of talent in one room. That's a lot of talent in one room. Now, if my camp predictions, who do I think is going to start when it's all said and done on that first game? A lot of people think it's going to be Christian Moss. I actually have been swayed to thinking it's going to be Justice Williams. I think Justice Williams, if he continues to do what he did during the spring, during the fall, there's no way you keep that guy off the field. I don't care who you brought in or not. I think Justice Williams has all the traits to be a really great outside receiver or boundary wide receiver. And as long as his route tree is correct and he can run all the routes that you need him to run, which during the spring he looked good doing all of that. I want to see it in the fall against pads, against these number ones, but in the spring he did it. And I think that he's going to end up being the guy that does that. And the sleeper in this whole thing, if there's an injury or if, say, Justice Williams or Christian Moss don't live up to the hype, Jordan Clay. I think Jordan Clay has a very good chance at snatching an opportunity for somebody who doesn't take advantage of it. But right now, I'm calling it right now on the episode. I think the starter for week 1, alongside with Rashid Williams and Dezmen Roebuck, I think is going to be Justice Williams. All right, now on the rest of the offense, there's a few other little battles. I think the guard position between Champ and Gary and Hatchett is going to be a battle. I think Champ actually pretty much has that, but that's kind of a little battle that we might see. And I think backup quarterback is going to be a little bit of a battle, but I actually think Elijah Brown is going to take that one too. I don't think it's that big of a. I don't think it's something that's headline worthy, if that makes sense. Now, when we look to the other side of the ball, I think we got some headline-worthy battles. The first one I want to take a look at is the edge. I've said on this podcast a few times that I don't think the edge room is proven enough to feel comfortable with. I think when you're looking at the edge room and who's going to start, I think the two guys, the incumbents, so to speak, Isaiah Ward and Jacob Lane, I think are your two guys who have the most experience and are likely to be your starters, but they haven't been really conspicuous, and neither have been big in the sack game. Nobody has big sack numbers out of two of those guys. And I think if you don't have somebody that's got big sack numbers like that, I don't think calling their position safe is correct. Now, while I think that Ward and Lane are probably going to be your starters, I think a guy like Deuce Davis is going to be the one to keep the eye on. Now, he might not play a four. I don't think he's a four down edge. I think he's going to be your rush edge, and you bring him in when I think you bring him in on passing downs. I think he's a guy, like I said, 3 starts, 3 sacks, and if he's healthy, he's a guy that I think can get can get pressure. I mean, he potentially, and from what I've seen, the best pass rusher that is on the roster when he's healthy. He's got natural bend. He's explosive. He only has the 3 games with the 3 sacks, so my biggest worry about him is staying healthy. Alongside those guys that I think that are going to be pushing for playing time, I think Logan George, the transfer from Ohio State, he's a big dude. He could set the edge. I think he's strong against the run. Can he rush the passer is the question. I don't know. Devin Hyde is another guy that, a lot of buzz around him, especially coming out of last season. He's also another guy with a big body and he's physical. And I thought he flashed at points during the spring, but can he be consistent? Can he be a sack guy, or is he like Jacob Lane and a lot of these guys that are solid edges, but they don't have star power. They don't create a lot of pressure by themselves. Those are going to be the questions. I think you have Victor Sanchez Hernandez, who's in the background, but I think he's kind of further off. And then I think the guy that everybody's kind of going to be paying attention to, I think when it coming out of spring, is going to be Ramzak Fruean. Real tall, real lanky, real quick, and he's one of those guys that just kept making plays in the spring and kept getting pressures on the quarterback. Can he turn those pressures into sacks? If he could turn the pressures into sacks, I don't think that anybody above him that isn't doing that is going to be able to keep him off the field, even as a true freshman. Now, along with that, you're going to see ZRS and X-Ray get chances to basically shift from their linebacker positions into the edge on certain downs, because we know both ZRS and X-Ray can rush the passer. And so I expect to see a lot of that, especially on passing downs, if our other edges struggle getting pressure on the quarterback. I also think you'll see with Washington, they'll play the jumbo edge sometimes. So you can't count out freshman J.D. Hill and Derek Coleman-Brusa. I know last year with Deshaun Lynch, we loved using the jumbo edge, and it was actually really successful for us. And so I could see one of those two guys, if they flash at rushing the passer, getting a chance to move out there and create that jumbo edge. If I'm going to pick starters going into week 1, I think unless somebody blows everybody's mind, I think what you're going to see Isaiah Ward and you're going to see Jacob Lane. And we're going to hope that one of those guys has really taken a step, especially rushing the passer. I think setting the edge in the run game, I think we have a lot of guys that can do that. I think it's going to be who's going to be that guy that can really rush the passer. And if you ask me, I think your sack leaders will be Deuce Davis. I think you might see one of the linebackers, probably ZRS. And I think the wild card here is going to be Ramzak Fruean. If he can really find his legs as a pass rusher, watch out, you guys. Watch out. Now, to look at the next battle that we're going to pay attention to and kind of siphon through, is going to be the interior defensive line. Now, I think Elinneus Davis has solidified himself as that number 1 guy. He's going to have one of those positions. Out of the 2 to 3 other inside positions you're going to see, I think it's going to be a mix between DeSean Watts, Kai McClendon, and Darin Conley, with Derek Coleman-Brusa and T.I. Umakais, all pushing for time. During the spring, Derek Coleman-Brusa was the guy that played a lot of the reps with the number 1s, but DeSean Watts made the biggest impact. So I'm curious to see how that battle rages on between the two of them. I also thought Darin Conley played a lot of conspicuous football. I thought he was not just good in the run and setting being able to take up blockers. I thought he was good at pushing the pocket and collapsing the pocket. So he's a guy I think is going to push for some playing time. Um, I think Ti is going to be an interesting case because he can rush the passer a little bit, especially for being as big of a guy as he is. But I think he's got nose tackle written all over him, and I think he's going to be one of those guys that eventually, when he does get his shot, it's going to be in the center or in the middle of the defense, plugging up the middle and pushing that pocket in from the very bottom. Um, when I'm looking at these guys, DeSean Watts is just disruptive. There's nothing else you can say about him. He's got experience. He's got playing experience, a lot of snaps, even though they were not at this level. But he's got a lot of snaps under his belt, and when he plays, he's been proven to be a guy that is one of the best on the field. Kai McClendon is an SEC product. He's transferring from there. He was hurt, so we haven't seen a lot of him. I think he's going to get every chance to get into the rotation. I think Connolly is more of your athletic, 285-pound guy. He's going to be looked to penetrate. He's going to be a penetrating tackle. They're going to try to find that pass rush upside and get the force from the inside. Guys like JD Hill and DCB, I think, are your tweeners. They're going to be the guys that can bust outside and play a little bit of edge, but also kind of play like a Michael Bennett on the inside and bring pressure. And I think Derek Coleman Bruce, who's right around 300 pounds, is going to be a guy that if he really gets his legs under him, he might take that starting job and not let it go. Um, Omar Khan is another guy that you got to bring in there too. He's big, strong. He's been developmental for the last couple of years, but is he going to get on the field? I feel like we saw him during the spring. He was rotating in. Can he make a splash? The way that I think this is going to end up playing out, though, is you're going to see a rotation regardless. I think all these guys are going to play a lot, and I could see maybe the two best guys aren't on the same line together. But if I was going to pick two starters, for me, it would be Davis and Watts, with McClendon and Connolly and DCB being your rotational guys. Um, I just say that because I don't know what McClendon brings to the table yet. Until he gets here, I'm not going to award him a starting position, especially if I was the coach. I think Watts kind of earned it, and I think him and Davis together could be really, really disruptive. All right. Now, the next battle, which I think is a pretty important battle, and I think is going to be the last one that we talk about today, and that's going to be the second cornerback. Now, Ryan, Washington has the talent, but the question is going to be who does Ryan Walters trust? Because Walters asks a lot for his corners. They got to press, they got to tackle, they got to play man, they got to play zone, they got to fit the run, they got to communicate, they got to play out on an island. We know Dylan Robinson is your one. I don't think there's any question about it. He's got the highest ceiling. He's athletic. He's already played. I don't think people are questioning that. I think right now, if you're looking at cornerback two, the guy that I think you're going to write in is probably the guy that's going to start is Emmanuel Karnley. He's a veteran. He's got experience. He's the Virginia transfer. He's about 6'1", 6'2". We saw during the spring that he's got that dog in him, that he likes to go after the ball. He doesn't give up anything easily. And I think he's likely going to be the guy that takes that starting role. But what we did see during the spring is Elias Johnson played really, really well, especially in man coverage. He's strong at the point of attack, going up and trying to get the ball and batting the balls away. Now that he's put on some good weight, he's probably put on like 15, maybe even 20 pounds since last year. He showed a lot during spring, and I think he could possibly challenge Carnley. Um, I think Ramon Adams is more going to play more in backup Rashawn Clark in the slot. Rashawn Duncan, I think, is an interesting person here because he didn't play in the spring. There's a lot of fanfare coming behind him, and people really like him, especially how his aggressive style fits in Ryan Walters' defense. And so when he gets in here, there's a lot of people talking about him being too good to keep off the field. They said that about Dylan Robinson last year, and it was true. So I'm very curious to see how that plays out. Elijah Durr, I think, is a little bit developmental, but I thought he played really, really well during the spring. And he's going to earn at least a look. Same thing with Kasani Giles and Jaron Jones. I think those are all guys that they look good in the spring, and they're going to get a look. If I'm going to predict who's going to start opposite of Dylan Robinson, I think Karnley is going to be your guy. I think he just the experience is too much, and I liked what I saw. He looked like he fits what Washington does in that death row style of defense. And so, if you're asking me if I'm putting my money down right now, I think Dylan Robinson and Emmanuel Karnley are going to be your two starting corners, with Rashawn Clark starting at the nickel, because I think Rashawn Clark may actually be your best cover corner out of the three of them. So these aren't just battles or position battles. These are identity battles. Um, at running back, Fish has got to replace production. There's a lot of production leaving between Muhammad and Coleman. And so are these guys going to be able to do it? At receiver, who becomes Damon Williams' other weapon? Like I said, I think we know he trusts Rashid Williams and Dezmen Roebuck. Who's going to be that guy that can step up and be that big body for him? And that's nerve-wracking, because that big body is usually who is your number one. I think when it comes to the edge room, the question is can you get pressure on the quarterback? Do we have a sack master in the room? I can't say we do, can't say we don't. Only time will tell, and I'm very curious to see how that plays out. In that defensive tackle, do we finally have enough depth? I think this rotation of linemen feels really good right now. When we see them when we saw them in the spring, those guys played up to the potential we were hoping for. Is that what we got? And at corner, is the new transfer going to be trustworthy in his new offense? Or are we going to look at guys who've been in the system? I think that's kind of what that breaks down. So that's all I got for you guys today. It's Monday. This is Montlake, and I'm your host, Montlake Miguel. Until next week, you guys, go Dogs.